California law provides a mechanism for the authority having jurisdiction, or AHJ, to obtain a warrant and enter a property even against the owners will under specific circumstances. This power is not unlimited and is reserved for situations where there is reasonable cause to believe that an imminent threat to public safety exists due to code violations. The legal basis for this action is found in the California Code of Civil Procedure, specifically sections 1822.50 through 1822.57. These sections outline the procedures for obtaining, executing, and enforcing an inspection warrant when a property owner or occupant refuses to allow an inspection by an authorized employee of a city department. The key element that triggers the AHJ ability to seek a warrant is the presence of an imminent threat to public safety. This means that the code violations must pose a significant and immediate danger to the health, safety, or welfare of the community or its residents. The AHJ cannot simply seek a warrant for minor or technical violations that do not present an immediate risk. Before seeking a warrant, the AHJ must have reasonable cause to believe that such a threat exists. This reasonable cause must be based on credible evidence such as first-hand observations, complaints from residents, or reports from other agencies. The AHJ cannot act on mere suspicion or speculation. The process for obtaining an inspection warrant involves several steps. Firstly, the AHJ must prepare an affidavit or sworn statement outlining the reasons for seeking the warrant. This affidavit must include specific details about the property, the suspected code violations, and the basis for believing that an imminent threat to public safety exists. Secondly, the AHJ must present the affidavit to a judge or magistrate and request the issuance of an inspection warrant. The judge will review the affidavit and determine whether there is probable cause to believe that the warrant is justified. Thirdly, if the judge finds probable cause, they will issue an inspection warrant authorizing the AHJ to enter the property and conduct an inspection. The warrant will specify the scope of the inspection, the areas to be inspected, and the time period during which the inspection must be conducted. Fourthly, the AHJ must execute the warrant in accordance with its terms. This means that the AHJ must enter the property during the authorized time period and conduct the inspection only in the areas specified in the warrant. The AHJ must also provide a copy of the warrant to the property owner or occupant at the time of entry. Fifthly, after completing the inspection, the AHJ must prepare a report outlining the findings of the inspection. This report must include details about any code violations that were discovered, as well as any recommendations for corrective action. Sixthly, the AHJ must provide a copy of the inspection report to the property owner or occupant. The property owner or occupant then has a reasonable opportunity to correct any code violations that were identified in the report. If the property owner or occupant fails to correct the code violations within a reasonable time, the AHJ may take further enforcement action, such as issuing a notice of violation, imposing fines, or seeking a court order to compel compliance. It's important to note that the AHJ authority to enter property under an inspection warrant is limited to the scope of the warrant. The AHJ cannot conduct a general search of the property or seize any items that are not related to the code violations that are the subject of the warrant. The AHJ must also respect the privacy rights of the property owner or occupant and avoid causing unnecessary damage to the property. The California Code of Civil Procedure sections 1822.50 through 1822.57 provide important safeguards to protect the rights of property owners and occupants. These safeguards ensure that inspection warrants are only issued when there is a legitimate need to protect public safety and that the scope of the inspection is limited to the specific code violations that are suspected. The procedures outlined in these sections must be followed carefully to ensure that the inspection is conducted in a fair and lawful manner. In summary, while the AHJ in California has the authority to obtain a warrant and enter a property against the owner's will to inspect for code violations, this authority is limited to situations where there is reasonable cause to believe that an imminent threat to public safety exists. The AHJ must follow the procedures outlined in the California Code of Civil Procedure sections 1822.50 through 1822.57 to obtain, execute, and enforce the warrant. These procedures provide important safeguards to protect the rights of property owners and occupants. It's also important to understand the definition of imminent threat to public safety. This generally refers to conditions that pose an immediate and serious risk of harm to people or property. Examples might include structural deficiencies that could lead to a building collapse, hazardous materials improperly stored, or electrical hazards that could cause a fire. The AHJ must be able to demonstrate that the suspected code violations create real and immediate danger, not just a potential or hypothetical one. The legal standard of reasonable cause is also crucial. This means that the AHJ must have enough credible information to convince a judge that there is a fair probability that code violations exist and that those violations pose an imminent threat. The information can come from various sources, but it must be reliable and specific. Vague allegations or unsubstantiated rumors are not enough to establish reasonable cause. When an AHJ applies for an inspection warrant, they must present their evidence to a judge in the form of an affidavit. This affidavit must describe the property to be inspected, the specific code violations that are suspected, and the reasons why the AHJ believes those violations pose an imminent threat. The judge will then review the affidavit and decide whether to issue the warrant. If the judge issues a warrant, it will specify the areas of the property that can be inspected and the time period during which the inspection can take place. The AHJ must adhere strictly to the terms of the warrant. They cannot search areas outside the scope of the warrant or conduct the inspection at a time not authorized by the warrant. During the inspection, the AHJ has the right to take photographs, collect samples, and conduct tests to gather evidence of code violations. They also have the right to speak with the property owner or occupants and ask them questions about the property and any suspected violations. However, the AHJ must respect the rights of the property owner or occupants and avoid harassing them or interfering with their lawful activities. After the inspection, the AHJ will prepare a report summarizing their findings. This report will identify any code violations that were discovered and recommend corrective actions. The property owner or occupant will then be given an opportunity to correct the violations. If the violations are not corrected within a reasonable time, the AHJ may take further enforcement action, such as issuing a citation or seeking a court order. The process of obtaining and executing an inspection warrant is subject to legal challenges. Property owners or occupants who believe that their rights have been violated can file a lawsuit to challenge the warrant or the inspection. They can argue that the AHJ did not have reasonable cause to obtain the warrant, that the warrant was not properly executed, or that the inspection exceeded the scope of the warrant. Courts will carefully scrutinize the actions of the AHJ to ensure that they complied with the law and respected the rights of the property owner or occupants. The laws regarding inspection warrants are intended to balance the need to protect public safety with the rights of property owners. AHJ must act responsibly and exercise their authority only when there is a clear and present danger to the community. Property owners or occupants must cooperate with AHJ and take steps to correct any code violations that are discovered. By working together, AHJ and property owners can ensure that buildings are safe and that the public is protected. It is also important to remember that the specific procedures and requirements for obtaining and executing inspection warrants may vary depending on the jurisdiction. Local ordinances and regulations may impose additional requirements or restrictions. Therefore, it is always advisable to consult with an attorney or other legal expert to understand the specific laws that apply in a particular situation. Furthermore, the definition of authority having jurisdiction can vary depending on the context. In some cases, it may refer to a local building department or fire marshal. In other cases, it may refer to a state or federal agency. The specific AHJ that has the authority to obtain an inspection warrant will depend on the type of code violation that is suspected and the location of the property. Therefore, it is important to identify the correct AHJ before taking any action. The process typically involves obtaining an inspection warrant, which is a legal document issued by a judge or magistrate that authorizes the AHJ to enter and inspect a property. To obtain a warrant, the AHJ must present evidence to the judge that there is probable cause to believe that a code violation exists and that the violation poses an imminent threat to public safety. The evidence may include photographs, witness statements, or expert opinions. The warrant will specify the scope of the inspection, including the areas of the property that can be inspected and the time period during which the inspection can take place. The AHJ must comply strictly with the terms of the warrant. If the AHJ finds code violations during the inspection, they will issue a notice of violation to the property owner. The notice will specify the violations that were found and the corrective actions that must be taken. The property owner will typically be given a deadline to correct the violations. If the property owner fails to correct the violations by the deadline, the AHJ may take further enforcement action such as issuing a citation or seeking a court order. In some cases, the AHJ may be able to take immediate action to abate the violation, such as shutting off utilities or demolishing a dangerous structure. The specific enforcement actions that are available to the AHJ will depend on the severity of the violation and the applicable laws and regulations. Property owners have the right to appeal a notice of violation or other enforcement action taken by the AHJ. The appeal process will typically involve a hearing before an administrative board or a court. The property owner will have the opportunity to present evidence and argue their case. The board or court will then make a decision on the appeal. Property owners also have the right to seek legal advice from an attorney if they are facing enforcement action by the AHJ. An attorney can help the property owner understand their rights and options and can represent them in legal proceedings. The laws and regulations governing building codes and enforcement are complex and can vary depending on the jurisdiction. It is important for property owners to be aware of their rights and responsibilities under these laws. By understanding their rights and responsibilities, property owners can help ensure that their buildings are safe and in compliance with the law. The AHJ, when acting under a warrant, must still respect the rights of the property owner. This includes the right to privacy, the right to be free from unreasonable searches and seizures, and the right to due process. The AHJ cannot use the warrant as a pretext to conduct a general search of the property or to harass the property owner. The AHJ must also provide the property owner with a copy of the warrant and a list of the items seized during the inspection.